Hello, everyone. I am Daniel. Superfeng99 is with me as well, and we are excited to talk to you more about The Circle Undone because it's a really cool campaign, and we played it together last year. So we're now on to scenario number 2 at
Yeah,
Death's
this
Doorstep.
one's a this one's a real doozy. A lot of fun, but can be very stressful if it goes bad. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Cool. All right. Well, here we are. How does this one go? What do we need to know from the intro or setting up the scenario?
Yeah, so after last scenario, when we're in the woods talking to some witches, we decided that we should visit the Lodge of the Silver Twilight to see what's going on. We heard that there was the incident, the prologue incident. Um, we heard that happened here, so we figured we should investigate. Um, the main thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what happened to those four missing people. And this is the main thing that depends on the outcome of the prologue scenario. Because when you're setting up this scenario, four of the different locations, notably the entry hall, the office, the billiards room, and the balcony, are going to have extra clues on them, six extra clues on them, and this is before they're even revealed. So, for example, I think the office gets an extra one per, for example. Um, However, you also remove clues as evenly as possible, equal to the amount of pieces of evidence that were left behind, which, if you recall, is the number of clues you were able to successfully discover in the prologue scenario. So, the better you did in the prologue, the more smoothly this one should go as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, we'll have to get those clues off those locations in order to figure out what happened to those missing people. Fortunately, it only does the people who you actually chose in the prologue. Everyone who's actually crossed off. So, if you only have three investigators and no one chose Jerome Davids, then the office doesn't get extra clues, for example. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the main shtick of the scenario. We have the Silver Twilight Lodge here, and things might happen to the locations in a bit.
Yeah, so we saw all these locations before, but we didn't see this version of them.
Correct. These are the quote unquote normal sides. In the prologue, they were all spectral.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to start in the entry hall. We have three shrouds, zero clues, and we can resign as an action. Um, and let's see. We should probably talk about this agenda before moving on as well, because it is a very weird agenda. So everything's normal, right? Silver Twilight enemies cannot be damaged or defeated. You are in their house. And when you would draw a monster enemy, instead of spawning it, you set it aside, and it becomes an ancient evil. So you put a doom on the agenda, and it can cause the agenda to advance. So no monsters are showing up now, but they are going to make the agenda come faster.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like that. I think it's a little too random.
I agree. So there are five and monster enemies in the deck to start with. These foreign counter cards are also not in the deck yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's five out of, I believe, 25. So it's a fifth of a chance at start to get ancient evils. Also, and like it technically isn't possible for you to advance off of the first turn, but it is very possible, and it happened to me advancing like after turn four. Somehow you're like, oh Jesus, how did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah,
And that's kind of important because on the act, you don't advance on the act at all. It's about the agenda advancing.
correct. The act just is like get as many clues as you can from those places. So gotta just do your best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, speaking of, so in the entry hall, by the way, that's where Gavriella's clues were gonna be. So hopefully you can get all the clues off of here. We can move to the Victorian halls. There's four shrouds, zero clues. As an action, you go looking for trouble. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a Silver Twilight enemy is discarded. Spawn that enemy in the Victorian halls, then gain two clues from the token pool. Group limit once per game. So this is a way that you could potentially get clues at the cost of spawning an enemy here. And we'll see here, there's only three Silver Twilight enemies, but they are the acolytes of this campaign, so they will come in with Doom on them. So don't be too hasty about doing that, I think.
Yeah, it counts towards your agenda as well. You can get the Doom off. We'll look at these guys in a second, but you have to be careful.
For sure. All right, shall we go to the office?
Let's do it.
So each Silver Twilight enemy in the office loses aloof. By default, they do have aloof. Same text, and there's four shroud, one per clues. However, there's also a forced effect if you reveal one of the bad symbols. While investigating the office, you put a doom on the nearest Silver Twilight enemy. That's real bad. Not even if you fail as well. It's just if you reveal it. Um, so poor Jim, I guess.
Yeah, he could
Yeah.
have his Elder Sign stay an Elder Sign.
Yeah. So this one definitely is the hardest to do, and we'll talk about what you need to precisely do in order to get the progress on those characters. But this is where Jerome Davids' clues would kind of pop off. But four shared location with an extra one for clues, and also something bad what happens if you investigate and not even fail. It can be pretty tough to get Jerome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the trophy room. Two shards, zero clues. As an action, you can either gain two resources or you spend two to gain a clue. Limit once per round. An action to gain two is not bad if you have nothing else to do, but it's pretty all right.
Spending two to get one clue also is really good.
It's true. It's it's a slow working hunch, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's intel report without the extra resources, but it's not
That's
a card
true.
from your hand, so I think that's pretty
That
good.
is true. Doesn't cost a card. All right, and over here is the billiards room, which I believe is where Valentino Rivas's clues are going to be popping out. Three shards, zero clues. You can, as an action, test three agility to compete with the other guests, as it says. And if you succeed, you get a clue. So I guess if you have good agility, that's good. It does not say the limit one success per game or per round, I should say. So if you fail, you kind of just out of luck. So that kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm. But you could do it next round.
Of
Maybe.
course. If there is the next round.
Right. Other side.
All right. Next, we got the master bedroom. Three shroud, one per clue is forced. When the round ends, if there is at least one investigator in the master bedroom, place a doom on the nearest Silver Twilight enemy. Yeah, don't stick around.
This one's tough. The map on this, I think, is, there's these long corridors here, and it's tough to sort of plan your turn where you don't end your turn here.
For sure. Yeah, I think that this location, I really like the flavor of it because it's like, yeah, don't sneak around in the bedroom, right? But I also like that it has effectively like an equivalent when it comes to the spectral side of don't stick around here. So that's kind of cool. And lastly, we have the balcony, which is where Penny White's clues are going to pop off. One shroud, zero clues. That is the easiest shroud here. And as an action, discard cards from your hand with a total of at least three intellect icons to parlay. The guest here knows more about the Silver Twilight Lodge than they let on. You just get two clues for the cost of potentially like two cards. So I don't know if that's worth it, but it is free, I guess.
Mm-hmm. If you really need to make up the clues, I think that's good. But yeah. So like, what's the point of getting clues besides getting the clues off of the locations that Penny, etc. dropped?
Good question. You will need clues when the act flips for a certain someone to pop out. So I think we should probably talk about that.
Yep.
All right. So actually, I should technically mention,
yes,
it only comes up when the agenda advances. So let's advance the agenda. Okay, the first thing is, and actually this is where it is, which is weird because it's on the back of this agenda, not the back of the act. Anyway, if the investigators do not possess 3 per investigator clues as a group, they lose all of their clues. Otherwise, they spend 3 per investigator clues and spawn the set-aside Joseph Meiger enemy at the location other than the entry hall that is farthest from all investigators. I think we'll talk about more about Joseph Meiger when we get to the second act, but here's the enemy. Let's just spawn him in the billiards room, for example.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, if there weren't that many clues to begin with on the locations, then you do need to have gotten them through those other abilities. But that's if you did really well during the prologue, right?
Yes, if you got the maximum amount of evidence discovered, there will be at most 2 per clues, one per in the office, 1 per in the master bedroom. So somewhere you will need to get these do these effects to get extra clues.
Mm-hmm. But if you didn't do so well, then just clearing off the locations of clues that came in on with them is probably enough.
Exactly. All right. We are also going to read an interlude in the campaign guide. So basically, for each of the 4 missing persons, you're going to check if there are no clues on their associated location. So Gabrielle is the entry hall, Jerome Davis is the office, Penny White is the balcony, and Valentino is the billiards room. And again, we're checking if there are no clues there. So if all of the clues were taken off at the beginning of the scenario, then that counts as having no clues. But if there were clues there, then you'll have to have discovered them to get them all off. And you have some flavor text, and you can record that the investigators are on that missing person's trail, which is going to be important for later.
And then we go to Act 2, or 1B.
Act 2, 1B, yeah. And we also remove all the clues from each location in play.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because, well, I guess we'll get there. Okay, so move everyone that was in the entry hall out of there because we're gonna do some stuff to that place. We are going to, for each location in play, find the set aside spectral version and swap them. So all of the stuff is going to stay on them, but everything is going to be swapped. Before we get there, before we do that, we also have to mention that each investigator is going to spawn one of the set aside monster enemies, which, as a reminder, they were set aside if they were pulled during the previous agenda as an ancient evils. And you do that one at a time until they're all spawned, and you have to spawn them at their location. So that could be pretty bad because at least, like, usually everyone gets one. So
yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting that they
also
don't have like a scaling number of on the agenda with the Dune threshold with the number of players. It's just kind of
Yeah, I think that there's some weird things going on with this one is because, like, I think they imagine, like, oh, you'll have more investigators and therefore more chance to get the clues because the clues to get off of the other people's locations is like not scaled by player. Oh, they actually wait, it is scaled by player because you have more of them chosen. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of weird. All right, we're also going to spawn the set aside Spectral Watcher enemy at the entry hall and shuffle the other cards into the deck. So we're going to take these. I'm going to take these two cards and put them over here, and then we're going to go one by one and replace these locations. Shall we?
sure. I'm looking at the Spectral Watcher because the guy is scary. Anyway,
guy is scary. We did see this guy in the prologue. But basically, yes, to summarize, it's a 3/5/3 enemy, alert and hunter, and when it's defeated, instead of discarding it, you're going to basically heal all the damage and freeze it for a round, as in it doesn't ready the next upkeep phase. So it's only a way to delay it. There's no escaping fate, as it says. Okay.
Right.
The entry hall. Boom. You can't go in here. It's blocked. Dun da da. I should also mention the reason that it moves everyone is because if a player is at a location that's getting swapped, of course it's going to reveal it. And so the backside of this, for example, is going to have the text. It doesn't have this text, so that's why everyone has to leave.
Yep.
All right, next we got the Victorian Halls. She'll flip up as well. 4 shards, 0 clues, haunted, lose an action. Classic.
Thankfully, there's no clues there. But
thankfully, there are no clues there. But that's a pretty bad haunted keyword.
There's other ways for haunted to trigger.
Indeed. All right, next we got the office, which is up here. 2 per clues with victory 2, however. Choose and discard a card from your hand as its haunted effect. That can be pretty nasty. But
yeah, thankfully there's not any more than this amount of clues because all the other clues went away.
Yes. All right, next we got the trophy room. 2 shroud, 1 per. The haunted effect is to lose 2 resources, and for each resource you couldn't lose, you take a horror. So in theory, you could take 2 horror, albeit that's pretty rare, I think. I like this one because it's kind of avoidable. You can be like, take some actions to maybe gain some money so you don't die. And it's also only 2 shroud, so not so bad. All right, next we got the master bedroom. Yeah, this one's always spooky. 3 shroud, 1 per. Haunted, place one of your clues on the master bedroom. As I said, this is not a good place to end your turn because there are ways for the haunted effects to trigger during the Mythos phase. So it's kind of similar. You don't want to stick around.
And it's victory 1, so you really don't want to lose your clues here.
Exactly. All right, next we got the balcony. 1 shroud, 1 per. Haunted. Each of your cards with health takes a direct damage. That includes your investigator, of course, any ally assets you have. What's the
leather coat?
Leather coat. There you go. That one new level 5 mystic thing, Servant Brass.
Oh yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Your composures would take this.
That is true. The composures is pretty rough. That would be pretty rough. But yeah, also 1 shroud is not too bad.
No. Get the clues and get out.
Exactly. Lastly, we got the billiards room. 3 shroud, 1 per. It does have victory 1, which is nice. Haunted, you must either discard an asset you control or take a damage, like a little mini, not frozen in fear, crypt chill. Albeit this is the choice, and I will gladly take the damage each time, mostly.
Yeah. Crypt chill is in the scenario already, so.
It is. All right, those are the new locations. We have a new act and agenda. Oh yeah, the agenda is weird. Let's talk about the act. The act is we need 4 per investigator clues. That's a lot of clues.
It's a lot of clues.
A lot of clues.
Plus the 3 that you already had before, so there's a lot more to get done.
Indeed. All right. Over the threshold, 11 Doom threshold. That is a lot of Doom. They definitely had the idea that you're going to be drawing those ancient evils in the first agenda. Each Silver Twilight enemy gains victory 0 and counts as an investigator for the purpose of determining where hunter enemies move during the enemy phase. One of the weirdest pieces of text they've written. Basically, the monster enemies, I should say, are going to be hunting down the Silver Twilight enemies as well as you. So make sure to remember that, because you can kind of use them as bait.
Yeah.
Because after the hunter enemy's move step of the enemy phase, each ready spectral enemy deals its damage value to each humanoid enemy at its location. And the important thing here is that it does say after the hunter's enemy move step. So it also doesn't say each unengaged spectral enemy. So if you have a Silver Twilight enemy or I should say a humanoid enemy at your location, an hunter enemy hunts to you, it will still deal its damage to that humanoid enemy, and then it will attack you also.
Yep.
So
So
be
you might
wary of
wonder
that.
why this matters, right? And that will come up a little bit later.
Correct. I
Maybe
guess
now.
speaking of later, which is right now,
Yeah.
yeah, we spent our clues. The mist blocking the escape recedes. You reveal the entry hall, and then you shuffle. You do an encounter deck reshuffle, because why not?
Hmm.
And the last bit of the act is that at the end of each round, each Silver Twilight enemy in the entry hall escapes. Place them beneath the entry hall out of play. Otherwise, you're moving each of them, each ready Silver Twilight enemy with the aloof keyword once toward the entry hall. So they're trying to run to the entry hall as well. They're all trying to run. And we all got to resign.
Let's look at the other side of the entry hall then.
Yeah. You're going to
Resign.
take an action to resign.
Yeah. So that's the scenario. Basically, you are trying to get as many clues as you can and victory points before you want to leave.
Yes.
As a side objective, as we'll see, there's some other stuff to do. Let the Silver Twilight guys escape and maybe talk to this guy.
Yes. So he is the lodge host. He has 333 humanoid cultist Silver Twilight elite. Once again, this guy only spawns if you were able to spend 3 per investigator clues from the first act. He has retaliate. He has victory 2. Notably, he doesn't have aloof, meaning that if you get to this last act, he is not going to leave. So you may need to talk to him. Speaking of, this is the hard part. If no other Silver Twilight enemy has Doom on it, parlay with Joseph Meiger. Remember, those enemies are like the acolytes, so it's going to be difficult to get them with no Doom on them. But if that is the case, you can test for intellect. If you fail, he attacks you. If you do succeed, he you get to resolve the text on the other side. So let's do this. Basically, he's like, oh, maybe you're okay. And then, he comes to our side, or at least he's trying to run away now. So we remove all Doom from this card. For the remainder of the game, Doom cannot be placed on Silver Twilight enemies, and Joseph Meiger gains aloof, meaning he's going to start running out of the lodge. And then he's going to flip back to his enemy side and disengage so that he can start running.
They run so slow.
It does, yes. There is definitely some strats where you can just engage this guy and just jam him down to the entry hall, taking damage along the way.
Yeah, you could.
You could do that. But yeah, so basically, as you said, it's a game of, are we saving any of these Silver Twilight enemies, and or are we able to save Joseph Meiger before we die or doom out, for example?
Mm-hmm. All the while,
Yeah.
this guy's blocking your way.
Yes. So once again, this guy can't die. So either someone is going to have to deal with this guy over and over again, or you'll have to evade him once and then try and run away and then make sure to evade him, keep evading him, etc. And yeah, that's pretty tough.
So I kind of like this scenario with the objectives that are kind of there's ways to do it. If you just want to get out, you can. If you just want to kill Joseph yourself and get the 2 victory points that way,
That's true.
you can. But I think there's a little element of push your luck in trying to get all the clues off the office and getting the clues from the other locations as well. Trying to not die yourself, and then worrying about the doom clock.
I agree. I think for me, I like this scenario too. The weird thing is that the objective is kind of not really known, because it's get clues. Oh, I can escape. Why do I want to have these guys run away? And a lot of it is like an inference of, oh, they're running away. That means that it's like they're escaping the lodge, and therefore that's good, maybe. But then again, like you could just be like, I don't like the lodge anyway, so just let him die. Um,
Most people probably on their first play do just that. They're like, these guys collect doom. They seem like they're attacking me. They have enemy printed on them. I'll just let them die.
Potentially true. I think also, uh, maybe this is our group, but how our group saw this through our blind playthrough is it's really hard to get all of these people out of the lodge without them dying. Therefore, that should be the objective because that's the hardest. And so we worked so damn hard to not let any single one of them die.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
we did it.
Shall we talk about the what happens when you advance the act and resign?
Let's do it. Go to R1. What happens in the back of this? Okay. There's some other things that happen back here, but
Yeah, if you do mount.
we can talk about that. Okay. R1. So R1 is you get out and you have escaped the spectral realm. You'll go to an interlude, the price of progress, which because Carl Sanford is shown at the head of the Silver Twilight Lodge and he wants to speak to you. The other resolutions, those two are about when you were defeated or whether or not the agenda flipped. So the resolution 2 is if everyone died and it was still Act 1, I believe. So basically, the lodge didn't become spooky and stuff, so you just died even before that somehow. And the investigators learned nothing of the lodge's schemes, so you're out of here and you're just going to go on to the next scenario.
You could resign. Yeah, I don't think you have to die for that to happen.
That's true. Yeah, you're just like, fuck it, we're just leaving. Resolution 3, however, is if you died or if you died during this this agenda and specifically before the Act 3 was out. So if everyone died, for example, then you get trapped in the lodge, and each investigator who did not resign is killed, which is probably going to be all of you, unless the doom threshold went, and then
No, so
those people who couldn't resign died.
so you can get out as long as you've passed Act 2.
Or do you mean Act 3? This one?
If you're in Act 3, then you can. If you die in here,
Yes.
then I think it's fine. As long as
Exactly.
yeah, it's just if you did it before you spent the 4 per clues.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
when you die.
As in the entry hall was still locked.
Yeah.
Yep. Everyone dies, and then you have to choose new investigators.
Yeah,
And you're gonna go to scenario 3. I've never seen this ever happen, and I feel like most people would be like, "Okay, we're starting over," instead of keeping
so
it
early,
going.
right?
But they do have text in case you do continue, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the interlude because I think that just rolls right from what
This
we were
is
talking
basically
about.
the actual resolution of the scenario.
Yeah.
You get a fancy blurb if you were already a member of the Silver Twilight, for example, Diana Stanley, which I was during the campaign, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing is you were talking to Carl Sanford, and it's going to check what happened at the end of the scenario, who was alive, who was dead, for example. So if Joseph Meiger was in the victory display, you go to Price of Progress 4. That can only occur if you killed him or was killed by one of the enemies. And yeah, so basically, if that happens, then Joseph disappeared in the mist, and people are like, "Oh, whatever, okay, fine. We are enemies of the lodge because want us to save him." Otherwise, if he is beneath the entry hall, which means he was able to escape successfully, we record the investigators rescued Joseph. You get 2 bonus experience, and you can then do a choice of whether or not you're going to refuse to be a part of whatever the lodge is doing, agree to be part of it, or, and this is the fancy route, you can agree to it, but actually be lying about their plans.
And there's one other way to get that to happen.
That is true. Let's see. So if back on Price of Progress 3, if neither of the above are true and the number of Silver Twilight enemies in the victory display is equal to or greater than the number beneath the entry hall, aka more Silver Twilight enemies died than were able to escape, then you still go to the fact that the investigators are enemies of the lodge, which makes sense. But if there are more Silver Twilight enemies that escaped than in the victory display, you go to Price of Progress 6, which Joseph is still alive, but you still have to make this choice of whether or not you refuse, agree, or agree that and you are lying.
Yeah, so that's the one where you don't get the 2 extra VP, right?
Correct.
Which means that
No Joseph for you.
he has to be like still in play, I guess, right?
Uh, Not necessarily, because if he just didn't spawn and
Oh, right,
all
right.
and more Silver Twilight enemies escaped, then you could get that.
That's right.
And
Okay, if
then,
he didn't spawn. Okay.
yep. Okay, if you go to 7, obviously you could just flat out be like, okay, we're enemies and we're done. If you go 8 or 9, you are members of the lodge and you add a cultist token to the chaos bag. The cultist token represents your uh influence with the or your effects of the lodge, stuff like that.
Makes sense. They are cultists.
They are cultists, and of course for Pressure Burgess 9, there is one thing to add to that: the investigators are deceiving the lodge in secret. Spooky. Um. Oh, and hey, we didn't actually wait. Did we? Did we not talk about this?
I don't know if we did.
Well, what do you want to do?
How do you get hunted?
Good. How about we leave that for the readers?
Yeah.
um.
What is this doing in
Yeah.
here?
What is this doing in here? Are you being hunted? I don't know. Anyway, there's some really trippy stuff there if you read that. But don't read it. Only read it if you're being hunted.
Exactly. All right. Uh, have we missed anything with the resolutions or anything? I don't think so.
I don't believe so. No, it's those 4, and then you can either be enemies, friends, or friends that you're lying. So
So usually when I play this, I mean, if I'm trying to go Silver Twilight route, then I want to save Joseph. Like that's 2 VP. I'm not gonna let go. If he's, I generally find that if he's not spawning, I'm not wasting my time with these Silver Twilight acolytes. Like,
yeah,
no, thank you.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
But I'm glad that all those routes are available no matter what happened earlier, right?
that's true. Yep.
Okay. We have some encounter sets to talk about then.
Yeah, all of these are new, and none of them are actually specific to this scenario. So we'll see them again. Let's talk about the Silver Twilight Lodge encounter set. I actually forgot. I forget the names of all these encounter sets. Anyway, we got the Lodge Neophytes 312 Humanoid Cultist Silver Twilight. It spawns any empty location, and they are aloof. They enter play with the Doom on them, but you can take an action to parlay at their location to test 2 willpower. If you succeed, remove all Doom from the Lodge Neophytes. So they are an aloof Acolyte with a way to get the Doom off.
Neat.
Pretty neat. Yeah, I like these guys. They're cool. I always love seeing the cultists in every campaign and see how they kind of mix up the original acolytes and Wizards of the Order. So it's cool.
We love a 2 difficulty parlay test.
That is true.
Get some fine clothes on. Like this guy's like pulling some fine clothes out, right? Or some robe or something.
There you go. Yeah.
Now,
This guy's already dressed in some.
He is.
Keeper Secrets 423 Humanoid Cultist Silver Twilight. Again, it spawns at any empty location. It has aloof and retaliates. Forced, when the Mythos phase ends, you put a Doom on him, and an action to parlay. It's 3 intellect this time, and if you succeed, you remove all Doom from him. So, similar to the Wizard of the Order, they accrue Doom, but the parlay test is most likely harder and pretty difficult for most investigators, I would say.
Here's the thing about this guy that you can't just compare him to the Wizard of the Order because in this scenario you cannot damage him until later on.
That is true. So, in order to make sure that this guy does not snowball out of control with a ton of Doom in the first act, you need to make sure that you do that parlay test at very significant times.
Mm-hmm. Or send him back into the encounter deck. You can persuade him away.
That is true.
Some tech cards. All right. They just like the original set 2, we've got a way to place Doom on cultist enemies that are in play.
Yep, we place a Doom on the nearest cultist enemy. Then, until the end of the round, increase the difficulty to fight, evade, or parlay with that enemy by 2. It really should say and parlay. By 2. And of course, if this does nothing, then again Surge. Yeah, this card's weird.
Why doesn't it just like fish one out of the discard pile or counter deck?
Good question. I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, this is a nice replacement, I think, for the original set. It's got a little bit more going on. The parlay part, I think, is neat. Would love to try this out with Alessandra, right?
For sure. She seems pretty good.
All right. This is a repeat from the prologue.
Correct. So we didn't talk about them either, so it's good to talk about them now. We
Mm-hmm.
have Terror in the Night Revelation Test for Willpower. If you fail, you put into play next to the agenda deck. If you fail by 3 or more, it gains Surge. If there are 3 copies of Terror in the Night next to the agenda deck, discard them. Each investigator takes 3 horror. So, as we talked about in the first scenario with the Piper Vazathoth, and what is the what is that treachery called again? Um,
Demonic pipings.
ours Demonic Pipings. Thank you. This is another one in which you have to have all 3 of them in play for that to actually do anything. And so this one doesn't innately gain surge. You have to fail by 3 or more. So sometimes this just does nothing. You fail by 2, and you're like, okay. But obviously on the third one, everyone taking 3 horror, it can be pretty bad. That can pretty much kill a lot of people by the time that happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen later, and you're just kind of looking at them next to the agenda, and you're like, well, don't fail this one.
Don't fail this one. Luckily, no, I'm sorry. I was about to say it's a terror, therefore logical reasoning. But no, it's not at your location again.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
made the same mistake. But things like the Survivor card.
Alter Fate.
Thank you. Alter Fate can for sure get rid of this.
Mm-hmm.
As well as the other one, the next one. Fateable Fools. This one is like an iconic piece of this campaign for sure. Omen Spectral. It has peril. You must decide, choose one. If there is no other copy of Fateable Fools in play, put Fateable Fools into play in your threat area. Or an investigator with another copy of Fateable Fools in his or her threat area takes 2 damage, or place a doom on another copy of Fateable Fools. So the reason they give you this choice, first of all, if there are no other Fateable Fools in play, you must choose the first one.
Yeah,
So you're getting this, and you are the fool.
Yep, you're the fool. And after that, no one else can be the fool.
That is true. So you must either choose that investigator who is the fool to take 2 direct damage, or you put a doom on their copy of Fate of All Fools. This is another huge reason why Ultra Fate is so good, because remember, peril only means you can't play cards or triggered abilities while resolving the revelation ability of a treachery card. When it's in play, you can still interact with things, for example, by Ultra Fating it off. So that's potentially a reason to put Doom on and be like, okay, I can Ultra Fate it off. But other than that, this card is definitely like a scary card, because you're like, okay, I guess I have to deal with taking potentially 4 damage in the next few rounds, for example.
Direct damage, and there's 3 of these. It's so scary, I think. I mean,
it is very scary.
It leads to some interesting play patterns, which is like, do I want to put the Doom and hope that we can get it off, or something happens? We just go quickly enough. It is nice when you draw this when it's the witching hour, though.
Exactly. They can be like, okay, but that's the thing also, is because it's peril, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to that, because the person with the Fate of All Fools can't make the decision for you, because you are resolving the peril, which is really cool design, I think.
Yeah, I like it.
It's cool. All right, we got some spectral monster enemies. First one is the Nether Mist, and this guy will show up in the prologue as well. If you're Jerome David, you know what I'm talking about. 3/4/3 monster spectral. Prey investigator at the location with the most clues. So it's weird because this technically isn't patrol. It's because they're still hunting towards an investigator, but it's kind of like they're patrolling to the location with the most clues. It's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it has prey. It has aloof and hunter, and Nether Mist's location gains haunted. Nether Mist attacks you. So obviously, if you are investigating a location with the Nether Mist aloof there, and you fail, then he's going to attack you. That's the main problem with that. But there are other cards that can activate haunted abilities on your location. So if this guy is already there, then that might spell some trouble and be like, oh, I have to do this and lose an action, and also this guy attacks me. Pretty bad.
I love
Victory
this guy.
1.
This guy's so much fun to play around. You're like, okay, I really want to see him out of the encounter deck. In 2-player, that does not always happen.
Yep.
I believe we use this guy as a power word vehicle.
Probably. That sounds about right.
And you're like, okay, he's not engaged with anyone, so you can do some things with parlaying in general. So that's kind of neat. But eventually you're like, well, we got to kill him. We need the victory points.
Exactly. All right, next one. We got 2 of these guys. The Shadow Hound. 2/3/1. I like those stats. Those are very nice stats.
Mm-hmm.
Monster special. Prey with the lowest agility. Hunter and retaliates. Forced after it attacks you. resolve each haunted ability on your location. So this is another way. If a Shadow Hound and a Nether Mist at your location, the Shadow Hound attacks you, then the Nether Mist will also attack you since it's a haunted ability on your location. Oh boy.
Yeah. The 3 health is a little spooky, I think, if you draw this during that agenda flip.
Yeah.
But otherwise, and the
Yep.
retaliate as well, right?
Yep. But I love the one evade because it means that pretty much anyone could evade it. Obviously, it's praying towards the lowest agility, but that's usually reasonably like 2 or 3 is the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 fight also means that like someone could potentially chip in for like 1 point of damage to save an action potentially.
Yes, very much.
So that's cool. All right, lastly from this encounter set, we have Whispers in the Dark. You put it into play next to the agenda deck. Each location gains Haunted, take a Horror. Forced, when the round ends, you discard this. So again, the Shadowhound attacks you, and the Nether misses at your location, and this has been into play. Then Shadowhound attacks you, then the Nether Mist attacks you, then you take a Horror. It's a lot of damage.
2 and 2.
2 and 2. So it's a pretty big combo. But this guy is going to go away at the end of every round. So usually this guy, I feel like it really never matters. But
yeah, it's a little soft. I think it's hard to remember sometimes that this is in play, but
that's true.
It's not everything can be Fate of Fools, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. All right, moving on. We got some spirits. This is a Wraith. It's a 2/2/2 enemy. Monster, Guy Spectral. It has Hunter. Forced, when Wraith is defeated by damage, except from a spell or relic. Instead of discarding it, attach it to its location. Attached location gains Haunted. Spawn Wrath at this location. Notably, this guy deals 2 horror, which can be bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like, so we talked about this in Carcosa, and I'm trying to remember what the enemy is. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The Poltergeist, yeah.
Yeah. The one that you can't damage unless by actually taking the intellect action on it. This is a very cool way to be like, this can only be damaged by spell or relics. And if you do kill it, not by that, it just may come back. I like the design of this enemy. It's cool.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cases where you can, kill it and then leave the location, and you're fine. Otherwise, yeah, the Poltergeist, like, you can kill it with a spell or relic, but they're coming back too, right? The nice thing about putting this into beneath the location or attaching to the location is you can not draw it again from the encounter deck, which is good.
That is true. All right, and we got this Trapped Spirits, Terror Spectral, Revelation, Test 3, Agility. I think it's like the first agility test we've seen this entire campaign.
Yep.
For each point you fail by, take a damage. So it's a Grasping Hands. However, if your location is haunted, as an additional cost for an investigator to commit 1 or more cards to the skill test, they must resolve each haunted ability on this location. So if you commit your manual dexterity, you might accidentally have the Wraith spawn and also the Nether Mist attack you, for example, and then also lose an action. Pretty much it means that if it's haunted, probably you shouldn't commit anything.
Yeah, don't be Amanda, right?
Don't be Amanda. Oh my god, you have to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one is a tough card. I remember I played Carolyn, and she doesn't really have agility. Even with Peter Sylvester in play, I think I took a bunch of damage from this, and there's not a lot of other damage in this one other than, well, that's not right. The Fate of All Fools, for sure.
Yeah.
And then some other things we'll see. So I think this is a tough card.
It's a pretty tough card. Alrighty. We got our base Crypt Chill and Obscuring Fog. Crypt Chill, I mean, it's as bad as it ever is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty bad.
Obscuring Fog is interesting here because of the haunted effects.
Yeah, precisely. This makes failing much worse. I also think that it can be a pretty significant tempo loss in the first act if you're like at the office and you're like, we need to get these clues off. Oh god, it's a 6 shroud now.
Right.
That's pretty bad.
I've been recently thinking that this card is actually scarier than most people think. Usually it whiffs. That's sort of why people are like, whatever. But it can really ruin your day if it's on a location where you just like, I can't beat a 6 shroud location right now.
Yeah, I think that the difficulty of this card comes in when it's precisely like this scenario where the tempo of investigating before something happens is really important. Usually in other scenarios, for example, like Midnight Mass, for example, it's like you're trying to investigate as fast as you can, but ultimately you're going as fast as you can, and then if you can't go, the scenario ends. In this one, there's like the mid scenario cutoff where you're like, I need to do things before that happens, and it's a
Hmm.
lot quicker.
And there's not a lot of choice, right? If it drops on a location that you need to get the clues off, in other scenarios, you'd kind of say, I'll get clues somewhere else. And it's just
Exactly.
not the case in this scenario.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So these 4 encounter cards are going to be shuffled in when the agenda flips. So only in the second bit. And we have some new stuff. We have the Realm of Torment. Truly a torrential realm. You put into play in your third area. When your turn begins, resolve each haunted ability on your location. And when the turn ends, you can test the real power to discard it. Holy God.
So if you draw this, right, during the Mythos phase,
Yep.
if your turn begins, then you're just doing these things without any way
Yep.
to avoid it. The only thing you could do is if someone else goes first and is able to remove the card for you or blanks it in some other fashion.
Correct. So that, for example, let's say you're first in the turn order, you draw your Mythos card, it's this card. Then the next person in the Mythos card order draws the Nether Mist. Well, you're getting attacked for free. So that's rough.
But yeah,
Yeah.
logical reasoning will work here.
Yes, correct. Because this is a terror at your location because it's in the third area, and it is a prime target. And also I feel okay. This is the real reason, right? When a lot of people say, and we talked about this in the first scenario, when a lot of people say that this campaign is very willpower heavy, it's always good to bring willpower stuff. In the first scenario, that was true, just because most of the things that were like, the racked and the one that restricted your activate abilities required action ability to, test willpower off. This, for me, is the main reason why it would be good to have good willpower to get this thing off of you.
Yeah,
Because if this thing can get stuck on you for like 5 to 6 rounds, you will just be screwed.
man, 5 to 6, that's a lot. I was gonna say even the second time it hits can be really bad.
Yeah. Oh God.
Ooh. Yeah. So figure out a way to get rid of this. Whether it's
Yes.
committing some cards. Of course, if you commit cards on this and you already, well, no, that one's from the Mythos card.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, it can be tough.
Yep. And the other 2 cards, of course, Shapes in the Mist. It has Surge. You just resolve each hunted ability on your location. So I have had this where I have had Shapes in the Mist, resolve each haunted, and then you draw Realm of Torment. Your turn begins, you resolve each haunted again. And you're like, please stop. Yeah. That's it.
Well, if that wasn't enough,
If that wasn't enough, we have 2 more cards, specifically from the Watcher in the Mist encounter set. This card is very weird. So, Revelation, heal 3 damage from the Spectral Watcher in case it was damaged going into the Mythos phase, I guess.
mhm.
You also ready the Spectral Watcher. It moves, engages, and attacks as if it were the enemy phase. Throughout the resolution of this effect, the Spectral Watcher gains Pray You. So there's like almost like 3 different caveats to this card
Yeah,
because it's very weird. The first one I think is important is when it says Pray You. For example, let's say that you are 2 locations away from the Watcher. Actually, this is a good example. I'm just bring these over.
yeah.
Why don't I get an investigator out here somewhere? So let's say here, Roland. That's not how you spell Roland. Okay. And then
Yeah.
we're also gonna get a Daisy.
Okay.
Okay. So this is like one of your videos where like you're explaining the hunter rules.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
The
So
only
let's say
part, yeah.
I'm Roland and I draw this card. Okay. So ready the Spectral Watcher. It moves, engages, and attacks as if it were the enemy phase. The prey is you. Okay. I am currently actually a better example would be if it's like this. No, like this. This is the best example.
Right. Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yes, this is the best example. Again, this y'all should rewatch Daniel's video about hunters and prey and stuff, because this is the situation where prey is the weird thing about this. Prey you doesn't mean that it ignores everyone else. Prey you only breaks ties. Currently, the closest person to the Spectral Watcher is Daisy. Therefore, this will hunt towards Daisy, engage her, and then attack. However, of course, if I was
Boo.
like this, I know, right? If
Yep.
it was like this, then it would have to break the tiebreaker and go this way. Additionally, in the other example was like this, because even though it's going this way, it's still going to engage Daisy and then attack her because it's like the enemy phase. Speaking
Exactly.
of like as if in the enemy phase, what happens to enemies after they attack during the enemy phase?
They exhaust.
They exhaust. Reminder, it would still be engaged with Daisy when it's exhausted,
Hmm.
but it is exhausted, which is a very weird thing to say.
So there's one other
Uh,
thing to point out with this is that during Act 3 or 2 or 3, whatever it is, um, or Agenda 2,
yeah,
the enemies also could be choices for the Spectral Watcher, right?
correct. Because the uh during the enemy phase applies here because the as if the enemy phase means that it is effect thinking that it is the enemy phase. And indeed will also, I think, will they damage the humanoid enemies as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. After the enemy step of the enemy phase, I think this is implying that that step happens. Yeah. Anyway, this card is
So
very weird.
so if this guy's here, you can just say, go that way.
That's true. Oh man. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is that in the return to, and we'll mention this later, they basically said, wait a minute, we didn't really want the, well, I don't know what they wanted or not, but they basically said, in the return to, you change this and it does not exhaust.
Correct. That is the main thing.
So you kind of wonder, like, was it intentional? They really don't like to go back and errata things, um,
Yeah.
for the most part. So they probably just said, let's just tune up the difficulty a little bit for the return to. But I wonder how many of the things you just pointed out were intentional.
That is a great question. I honestly don't think that the not knowing that they exhausted after attacking was intentional. I think it's possible that they didn't intend that, or I should say, I don't think they ever. So this is my crackpot theory.
Mm-hmm.
When they were making this game, and they said this enemy exhaust after it attacks you, that was a purely board game thing where they were like, how do I keep track of all the enemies that have attacked me during the enemy phase? Okay, we'll exhaust them each time they attack you just to make sure that you don't think they can attack you again. But then all of these different rules, uh, uh, like continuations of that effect start happening, and they're like, oh god, right, I guess that does happen. Okay, return to just make that not happen anymore.
Yeah. How about the prey part?
Yeah, the prey thing is weird. Again, obviously, I think their intention might be prey only, um, to make them literally ignore everyone else. But that still leans into some of the same things. So, like for example, if this guy's here, and if it's prey only, then it's gonna move here to Daisy, and then not do anything. And then after this resolved, it's still gonna engage Daisy anyway because it loses the prey only. So,
That
like, I don't even know how they would do this.
that's true. I guess there are some other cards that say something like move until it reaches your location or something,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
it is a little
Or
odd
like,
that it says pray you when that hardly actually does anything.
right. I think honestly, what it should say is move it directly to your location, pray you.
Yeah.
Because then that means it will attack you and it will for sure go to you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, man, Spectral Watcher is just such a pain in the neck the entire campaign.
Yeah. Yep.
This card doesn't make it any easier for
No.
sure.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, we didn't talk about the tokens.
No, let's do it.
The
All right.
skulls are the same as in the first scenario. That is the prologue, except for everything was haunted back then. So -3 is the same, I suppose.
Correct.
And then the other two,
Uh,
remember, are based on your choices of the beginning of the campaign. Are you accepting your fate or not?
yeah. So if you are accepting your fate, tablets of -2. If you fail in this attack is if this is an attack or vision attempt, resolve each haunted ability on location. Jesus. Make sure you don't fail those.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have another thing in case you rejected your fates, -2. If there is a special enemy at your location, you take a damage, regardless if you succeeded or failed. So I mean, that's where that's more damage is coming from. So
That one's really tough.
yeah, yeah,
I mentioned earlier, like, oh, there's not much damage in the scenario. Well, this, yeah. Are you looking
yeah.
at the other side?
I was wondering, is the damage in a horror? I was wondering if it said like for each spectral enemy, and I'm like, that could be cool.
-4 though.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's funny. Anyway, that is this scenario. I think it is a pretty neat one. We'll talk about it a little bit further in our overall ratings.
Let's do it.
All right, so replayability. I mentioned a little bit earlier about how each playthrough could be a little different because you can make some different choices resulting in the different paths in the interlude. Wasn't there like 9 things that you could read there?
Yes.
Yeah. So that that's good. Hmm. But that they're mostly kind of the same idea. That you're either deciding to just leave early or you're sticking around to help out the Silver Twilight folks.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing about this scenario is that the first act, in theory, is the same each time,
Mm-hmm.
except the fact that technically your choice of who you took in the prologue changes where you're going. For example, if you take Jerome Davids, you're more likely to go to the office. But if you take Valentina instead, you're going to go to the billiards room, right? And so that can mix up the first scenario as well as, how many pieces of evidence were left behind to see how difficult it is. And yeah, I think there is some merit to having the choice of whether or not to kind of ally yourself. Oh, you know what? I'm going to take that back slightly. So it has a choice, but it's also like not a choice because sometimes the scenario just goes so bad for you that you can't ally yourself with the Silver Twilight Lodge.
Yeah.
You're just like forced to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be interesting if there was like some, instead of like a negative reinforcement way that happened, there was like a positive reinforcement. So like the more people you saved, like the more you're in with the Silver Twilight or something like that. So like I think that what they were trying to do with the scenario is cool, where the scenario has you quote unquote make this choice during the gameplay. I think that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time it does kind of lend itself, for me at least, it just depends on whether or not you get Joseph Meiger out or not. If you do, it's very different of a scenario than if you don't, and that's really the main point of replayability there.
Yeah. How about like extra XP if you save everyone?
Potentially, yes. I mean, obviously, I think that would be nice. Maybe they have victory 1 instead of victory 0. Oh god, but maybe then you'll be forced to kill them
That's
because
right.
they have just had victory 1. Yeah. Okay, so with that in mind, I think I will give this scenario a 3 for replayability. It's mostly the same, but there are some key things that can make it interesting.
Okay. I'm gonna go with like a 3.5. I do like the idea that maybe with the different people that you were playing at the beginning will force you to go to different locations.
Yep.
That's kind of neat. All right, we move on to fairness. So the most random part I think is just the freaking monsters at the beginning, and there's pretty much nothing you can do, right?
There is nothing you can do.
Is there a way to pull them out with like on the hunt or something, or does that not work?
I believe the agenda specifically says when you draw a monster enemy. So I guess in theory you could try to spawn them instead of drawing them.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think On the Hunt does.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's a good idea, but
Yeah, I mean it could be. But yeah, I think ultimately you have no control over it, which is kind of the weird part about it. The first act being very variable in that sense can lead to some feel bads for sure.
Mm-hmm. What else from fairness? I think there's appropriate pressure when it comes to trying to save all of the Silver Twilight members at the end. I found when I played it before, trying to math out how many rounds do I have to get them out because they move so slowly. It's kind of interesting. Other than that, it's not a terribly difficult scenario just because you can get out whenever you want, really, once you get to the last act.
Yeah, I think that getting 4 per clues also like it's a lot more than people think, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly just because like if you were trying to go for the Joseph Meiger to begin with, then it's already hard to get like 3 per and then also be like, okay, now we have to get 4 per more. That's 7 per clues total split across those 2 acts. So it can be a lot of clues that people need to get, I think.
The nice
Like
part is that if you are going to get 3 per at the beginning, then you get to keep any excess.
that is true. Yes.
If you can't even get 3 per, then you get nothing. You
Yeah,
have to start
which
over.
is unfortunate.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I think with that in mind, I think again, it feels random for that first act, but like the second act is kind of fine. And I think it's fair. Like I think that all the stuff with the Watcher is like fair enough. I think the ability to freeze it if you
Mm-hmm.
actually were able to kill it, albeit 5 health is pretty bad. I think I'll also give it a 3, I think.
Yeah, that seems right to me. There's a lot of things you can do at the beginning to try to get clues, which is nice. Like if you have agility, you can go get clues that way. If you have money, go get clues that way. But like there's a few rough spots, but I don't think it actually turns into like a big problem, overwhelming problem, unless you get all the haunted effects piling on you, which you should just try not to do.
That's true.
All right. Balance.
Yeah, balance is interesting. I actually think that like I think this scenario to me feels a lot, not a lot, but it sometimes feels like the fighter doesn't have enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, notably, obviously, in the first act, no monsters spawn and you cannot kill the things. So the fighters are literally useless. In the second act, monsters do spawn, but there's only 5 of them, and the Spectral Watcher cannot be killed. So for the fighter to be able to be useful in that scenario, the Spectral Watcher, you have to basically just kill them over and over again, which I guess is the intended purpose, right? But it can gotta be like, okay, I guess I'm just killing this thing over and over again. It kind of just feels bad.
Yeah.
I also think that the one thing that it does allow, at least for multiple paths, is yes, you can either kill Joseph Meiger and the rest of the Silver Twilight acolytes uh, yourself, or just let the monsters deal with them, kind of like soaking damage and horror.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, that's kind of another thing that the fighters are like, well, I guess if they're just going to die on their own, I don't need to do anything. So I think for me, that kind of lends, it's kind of similar to the Miskatonic Museum problem, I think, in this scenario, especially in the beginning act. What do you think?
I think the problem really comes from what's the guy, Keeper of Secrets or something?
Yeah.
So they should have made that something that the fighter could deal with.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Otherwise, like probably someone who can get clues on your team is not going to want to go do that. They're going somewhere else to get clues.
Yeah, I think that it would be interesting if instead of being that you couldn't damage or defeat them, that maybe if they would be damaged, like you exhaust them or you remove Doom somehow. I don't know. Like you intimidate them by, putting a gun at them and then the Doom comes off or something. I don't
I
know.
mean, even just a
Um,
parlay with combat, right?
that's true. Yeah, that is true.
Anyway, that's kind of my main issues. That I agree with you that the fighter's not doing enough, but the willpower stuff on the other guys, the neophytes, I think that's fine. A lot of guardians can usually get their willpower up.
That's true. Leo did pretty well
Yeah,
talking to some acolytes.
that's right. So that's usually fine, and you can run around doing other things, I suppose. But that Keeper of Secrets, he requires an immediate solution,
Yeah,
and it's not
definitely.
even a good one, right? Because if you just parlay, then you got to go do it again in 2 rounds.
Exactly. All right. I think with that in mind, I think I'm gonna put it at 2.5. It sounds a little low to me, but I think that's kind of where I'm feeling with that.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. I don't really want to go any higher, but I don't feel like lower is that reasonable because there are different things you can do. It's just that
Exactly.
it kind of skews in a direction that is tough for scenario 2, I think.
Yeah.
And our last one is the experience. I think that this gameplay loop is really kind of neat. I like the idea of your enemies being possibly helpful. Well, the Silver Twilight ones, as far as being bait for other enemies, and you something different to do with them. I think compared to pretty much every scenario we've seen before this one.
Yeah. I also really love the flavor of the scenario. I love when the locations turn from the normal side to the spectral side because
Yeah.
that just feels really cool. I love how all the art changes. That like the bedroom goes from like this nice pristine bedroom to this like decrepit, old, rotten stuff.
Hmm.
Um, that's all of that stuff is really cool, and I love the experience of like, oh yeah, you are locked in here, try and get out kind of feel. I think this, if anything, this one lands because the theme of the scenario is just so good. Like being locked in a haunted house kind of vibes is really cool.
And the beginning, right, where you're going around at a party, basically.
Yep. Yeah. It kind of has a similar experience to The Last King, where the beginning is like you're talking to a bunch of people and then it slowly gets more and more creepy as the scenario goes on. This one is like beginning is nice and then it immediately cuts to like everything goes dark and then you're like, "Oh god, what's happening?" Really cool stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna give this like a 4.5.
I think I was also going to go 4.5. That sounds good.
All right. So that's about it for now. We will talk about the return to. Otherwise, if you're not interested in that, we will be back to talk about the secret name, which is a very cool scenario as well. But yeah, we're gonna pause here and then go set up things for the return to changes. Yeah, we have some new things to look at on the board here. So what do we got, Superfang?
Yeah, so the first thing I think that's pretty obvious is we have a new enemy at the very start. It's Senator Nathaniel Rhodes. He comes in also with one per investigator clue, so in this case, two. He has one fight, two health, one evade. Humanoid cultist Silver Twilight aloof. As an action, you can parlay with him to test two willpower. If you succeed, you either take control of one of his clues, or flip one doom on him to its clue side. If you fail, you flip one of his clues to its doom side. So, kind of has two clues on him. And as we talked about before, we talked about how the maximum, or I should say, the minimum number of clues in this scenario, if you did super well at the beginning, is 2 per. This now, in theory, has 3 per total. One's on Senator Rhodes, and then the 2 on the master bedroom in the office. So I guess you don't need to do any of the other schmoozing stuff that you need to.
This is just like another one, basically.
Exactly.
However, I think
Speaking of,
it's interesting because you could put extra doom on him from the encounter cards.
that's right, and you could get that, turn it into clues if you want to as well.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a new location. It's the wine cellar. I feel like I've never been in here.
Why would you go in here?
Yeah, well, I don't know why. But 5 shroud, 1 per clues. Already that's pretty tough because 5 shroud's crazy. As an action, you disturb the tranquility of this quiet place in search of evidence. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a monster enemy is discarded. Set that enemy aside, out of play, then gain 2 clues. Group limit once per game. So this doesn't produce an Ancient Evils, which is nice because you're not actually drawing the enemy. But you know that you will have to fight this enemy when the agenda flips. So I guess that's the trade-off.
Maybe this is how you draw your victory point enemy on purpose.
Ah, there you go. That does work. But you guys, you don't have much choice, but it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, those are the major changes on the map. We have some other changes. We have a new version of the wine cellar when we get to the Spectral versions, which we'll talk about in just a sec. A couple of new encounter sets, mainly the one that was Realm of Death with the what is that one called? the one that I'm terrified of. The haunted. Anyway, the one that
Realm of Death, right?
Sorry, it's called Realm of Torment. That's the actual name, right?
That's one of the cards, yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That encounter set with that card has been replaced with Unstable Realm. So those ones are going to get shuffled in when the Act 1B does so. And finally, new rules. While resolving the Watcher's Grasp Treachery, the Spectral Watcher does not exhaust after it attacks. We mentioned this during the main video, but yes. So it doesn't exhaust after it attacks, which I think was their intention to begin with.
Okay, we have some new cards in the counter deck to look at for this scenario. Well, just this one.
Yeah, we have a new enemy, Dmitry Konstantinov, taking the long view, I guess. 4 fight, 3 health, 2 evade, humanoid cultist Silver Twilight. Spawn the location with no other Silver Twilight enemies farthest from you. Forced, when he enters play, you put 2 doom on him, and after you evade him, for every 2 points you succeeded by, remove a doom from him.
Oh god, he's horrible.
Yeah.
If you draw him in the first The first part of the scenario?
Yeah.
Yikes.
Um, yikes. Also, he doesn't have aloof, meaning in the second part, he's not going to run away, which is hilarious.
That's right. You
Kind
can
of
kill
weird.
him though.
You can't just kill him. Albeit he's going to get victory 0, and then maybe anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. But I think this is tough to run to the other side of the map and then evade him by a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Again, though, it is nice in the start that he doesn't have aloof, meaning you don't have to take an action to engage him to evade him, which is nice. And also like it's not a parlay test, so if you're bad at those things, then you can just use your foot instead as a foot 2 test, so not so bad. But yeah, having it 2 doom and also having to run all the way across, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and even like you have to succeed that foot 2 test by at least 2 to do anything.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a replacement for the wraiths.
Yes. So this is the Screeching Banshee 331. Previously it was a 222. It has Hunter. Forced when you deal 1 or more damage to the Screeching Banshee, except from spell or relic, resolve each haunted ability at its location. God, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite. We said earlier, like, oh, this isn't so bad. You can get away with not having a spell or relic.
Yeah. Yeah, this kind of sucks. I don't like this.
Easy to evade, but you're not going to get away very far.
Yeah. If you're at the Victorian halls, you have to spend an extra action to attack them, basically. That sucks.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So in part 2, so it does 2 damage. So this guy can make quick work of any of the Silver Twilight Acolytes, right? Or
that is true.
enemies.
Yeah. All of them except for this guy have 2 or less health, so.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. And then there's Bloodthirsty Spirits.
Yeah, you put into play in your 3rd area. While your location is haunted, as an additional cost for you to commit 1 or more cards to a skill test, you must resolve each haunted ability on your location. It's the same thing as that other card, except now you do it for every single one of your tests.
Don't be Amanda.
Don't be. Oh God. Oh God. Yeah, this is another test 3 will probably at the end of your turn to get rid of it.
This
Holy
is one
shit.
that you wish you could take the test earlier.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Because the test itself is going to make you do this if you're committing cards.
Oh God. Yeah. This is another terror that's a prime target for logical reasoning. I think you do it basically if it's the second half. So that's so bad.
Or you can have the tower in your hand and you're like, "Bah, who cares?"
Haha. Who cares? Alrighty. These are replacements for the Crypt Chill and Frozen in Fear. Crypt Chill and Obscuring Fog.
Yeah.
Mist from Beyond, which is kind of the Obscuring Fog analog. Revelation, attach it to your location. It gets +1 Shroud. Forced at the end of the round, if there are no clues on attached location, move Mists of Beyond once toward the nearest location with 1 or more clues. It's hunting. I like the card. It's really cool.
Me too. So you can't get rid of it other than, Alter Fate or something.
Yep.
But +1 Shroud isn't terrible, and you can usually keep ahead of it. I think it's neat.
That is true. Yeah, it's really cool. I will say, because I'm a stickler for the rules, I feel like they should also say attach it to that location, because in theory it's still technically attached to the other location. But who cares about that?
All right, fair enough.
Okay, Supernatural Tempest Revelation test 5 agility, really big agility test. If you fail, choose and discard cards from your play area and/or from your hand with a total printed resource cost of at least X, where X is the amount you failed by. Wasn't there something analogous to this in Carcosa? Am I crazy?
Yeah, there's something like this where it's like almost like corrosion.
Right, corrosion, and also that event one.
Yeah, there's one in the last scenario, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
A little bit of ants thrown in here too.
Right, that is true. It is good that this can be from your hand. That is very good. Still a pretty rough treachery test because you're expected to fail a foot 5 test for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like, as a comparison to Crypt Chill,
I mean, I think that it's more variance basically because, for example, let's say that you already have your Leo Luca to play you have your second one in your hand. Okay, you can just discard the one in your hand and nothing happens, right?
Right.
So it has its upsides for sure, but it can be worse in theory as well.
Good card.
Yeah,
All right, now we have something kind of interesting. I think this Unavoidable Demise card is one of the coolest encounter sets cards that they've ever come up with.
for sure. Yeah. So Revelation test 2 agility. If you fail, take 2 damage. However, if you succeed, you put it into play next to the agenda deck. Okay. While it is next to the agenda deck, each other copy of Unavoidable Demise gets +1 difficulty and deals +1 damage if its test is failed. So, let's say you've succeeded one of these already, it goes into play next to the agenda deck. The next one would be a test of agility 3, and if you fail, you take 3 damage instead. Really, really cool design. I like it is really cool.
And if you pass that one somehow, the
Yeah,
next
then
one is
the
going to
next
be
one is 4.
4.
And 4 damage. But then if you pass that one, you're in the clear. There's only 3 of them.
That's right.
Yeah, it's kind of like those Vengeful Serpents return to TFA.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's neat because you kind of have to think about this. Like, okay, the wrong person can draw it and then keep drawing it and keep taking tons of damage.
Yeah.
Or you get lucky and the person who can pass these tests that are scaling up can just get rid of them forever.
Yeah.
Here's
And I like how...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, I like the fact that this, like a legitimate choice for this, is if your fighter draws it and they're like, I will force myself to fail so that this doesn't become worse for someone else, right?
Exactly.
I think that's really cool.
You know what you could do, which would be really funny if you want to grief the team?
Uh-huh.
You could play Alter Fate on this.
After all 3 of them are
After all 3 are out, yeah.
Yep. Amazing. Fantastic.
All right, we got 3 copies of Fate of All Fools. Wait a minute.
Hey, it's the same card, but no, it is different text, but the same card name. Which I guess, and we were talking about this before, in theory has some consequences if you do this optional variant that a lot of the return twos do when it comes to randomizing encounter sets from both sets. However, let's read this first. Okay. Revelation. If there was no other copy of Fatal Fools in play, you put into play in your threat area. Same as before. Otherwise, an investigator with another copy of Fatal Fools in their threat area draws the top card of the encounter deck. That card gains peril, its effects cannot be cancelled, and cards cannot be committed to skill tests while resolving its revelation effect. So, effectively, if someone else is the fool, instead of you drawing a card, they draw a card, and sometimes that card can be pretty bad. But ultimately, it is kind of like you're still only drawing one card, but it can't get worse, obviously. Like, you can't cancel it, you can't commit stuff to it. But if you just draw like the freaking Mist from Beyond, you're like, okay, I'm great.
Or an enemy.
Or an enemy. That's true. Because then they just go into play and you're done resolving it. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little random, but what did they have against committing cards to seal test when they were deciding this?
Yeah.
That's
a lot of things don't like to commit stuff.
Yeah. Right. So about the whole thing where you could have this one and the original Fate of All Fools in play. So yeah, where it says another copy of Fate of All Fools, it refers to by title, not just this same card.
Yeah. And just to clarify, all of the return twos have always had this text where there's a optional variant to randomize encounter sets between the original and the return to versions. And ultimately you just shuffle them all together and use a number of cards equal to the amount of cards that would normally be there. So for example, Witchcraft and Hexcraft, they all have 7 cards total. So you shuffle the 14 cards together and you randomly choose 7 of them to actually shuffle into the counter deck, for example. So in theory, there could be 4 Fate of All Fools going around, which that means that one person is really a fool. Sorry, not 4. 6 Fate of All Fools in theory, yes.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah.
It's not just the same number of the original card variant because they can't quite match those up all the time. Okay. Have you ever done this, by the way?
Nope.
Yeah, me neither. I think I'm tempted to do it for this just because it seems they wanted you to do it, right, for having the same name card, but I've never done it.
Yep, never done it. Definitely seems interesting, but ultimately it's pretty cool.
All right.
All
From
right.
the other side. So this is the replacement for what?
the Spectral, sorry, the Realm of Torment.
Realm of Torment. Okay.
Yes. Although I think technically this one is, but whatever.
Yeah.
Let's do from the other side. Revelation tests 3 agility. If you fail, resolve each haunted ability on location. If you fail by 3 or more, resolve each of them twice instead. So at least it doesn't have surge, and at least you have a chance to not resolve them, because as opposed to the one that just makes you resolve them and then surges.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
A lot of agility tests.
a lot of agility tests. Yeah, you'll notice in this return to, it's actually pretty balanced between the willpower and the agility tests. There are a lot of agility tests.
Mm-hmm. Which is good. Like, I feel like Rita could do a lot more here than she could have in the original.
For sure.
Anyway, last one is Unstable Energies. I think this card has an errata on it or something.
Does it? I'm not familiar with that, but we shall look it up.
Yeah, it's something about, like, I mean, you're talking about the rules earlier, but so it attaches to your location when you leave. I think it's supposed to be after you leave.
Oh, that's interesting. So you'll be at the new one?
But you're looking it up, right?
I am looking it up. So,
Okay.
yes, you are correct. The errata says, instead of when it says when you leave attached location, resolve each haunted ability on it, it says after you leave attached location, resolve each haunted ability on it.
All right. Well, I feel like probably you couldn't have done it otherwise. Like maybe if it was one of these ones where you couldn't have left, or I don't remember. There's some interaction where they had to change it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of weird because, the resolve each haunted ability on it is referring to the attached location.
Right.
And so the errata is basically saying you leave the location, you're in the new location, resolve all the haunted abilities from your old location where you are, I guess.
Yeah.
So like the Nether Mist can still attack you. If you have to leave the master bedroom and drop a clue, you drop it on your new location, for example.
Mhm.
So it's kind of weird, but I guess, yeah. Maybe also the reason that they did this is because if you are in the Victorian, no, you would still do the thing. I was going to say like you lose an action, but you're spending it before you leave anyway. So
Yeah, it might be a different scenario where there's some way to, like, you get locked out or something. But anyway,
that's true. Yeah, that makes sense.
is it the bottom part at the end of the round? If there are no investigators or attached location, discard it.
Oh, that's potentially it. Yeah. So like, let's say after you leave, so you are for sure leaving, then you resolve each haunted. Like maybe the when you leave, if it triggers when you're already there, then like something could stop you from leaving. I don't know.
Well,
yeah,
there is an errata. Now you know.
there's a errata. Also, we should look at the other wine cellar because I feel like I forgot about it.
Yep.
Yeah. So the haunted version of the wine cellar is this guy. 5 shroud, 2 precludes, no victory though. What the frick? Reaction: after you successfully investigate the wine cellar, either discover an additional clue, okay, or remove a doom from a Silver Twilight enemy in play. Haunted, you must either place a doom on a Silver Twilight enemy in play, or take a direct horror. Again, I feel like I've never done this.
Again, not sure why you'd want to come here. It's in this like awkward situation where you go here, you can get cornered in by the Spectral Watcher or something, and I guess you could lose him in here. You could get him in here, and then you can leave, and then he's kind of far away. I don't know. Like the map here, I think, does not lend itself to wanting to go to a dead end like this.
I feel like they really should have given this place victory. There's like otherwise no reason to come here.
Yeah, maybe you're really trying to get Doom off of a Silver Twilight enemy?
I guess, and that's potentially useful for Joseph Meiger because you can't talk to him unless there's no Doom on anyone. So I don't know.
On anyone else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Maybe if you're of a big team, you could have someone come in here. I don't know.
Yeah. I believe that's the return to.
Yeah. Let's briefly talk about the tarot cards, though. We forgot to mention this before, that instead of accepting your fate at the beginning of this campaign, you get a particular campaign reading, which is somewhere.
Right here in the Witching Hour, when you accept your fate, instead of earning the Tower and the Ace of Rods, you can do this instead. So you perform what's called a campaign reading with 8 specific cards in that specific order. Temperance, Justice, blah, blah, blah. And the way that works is using the tarot cards. Each tarot card will represent one of the 8 scenarios. And each tarot card has a positive side and a negative side. So, for example, the one that they give here is the High Priestess 2. during the first intellect test, each investigator performs each round, they get +1, and then the reverse is they get -1.
Mm-hmm. What is the
And
one for this one?
good question. It's always the one that's on the agenda, which is really cool, by the way.
Ooh,
It's
I didn't know
justice,
that.
I guess. Yeah, because each agenda starts with one of the tarot readings, I should say, and that is the one for each scenario, I believe. So this one's justice, and you know what? I forgot again to bring the tarot deck out. Where is that?
It is down in the barrel in the bottom right, I think.
Down in the barrel in the bottom right. Okay. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Um, let's go find justice, I guess.
Sure.
Justice. There it is. Justice. Cancel the first Doom that will be placed on the final agenda of this game. Or, what's the other side? The final agenda of the game enters play with 1 Doom on it.
So does it tell you which one you're supposed to have up, or you decide if it's right side
Yeah,
up or
so
not?
you do a campaign reading, and that means that at the beginning of the entire campaign, before you've played anything, you decide 4 of the cards to be reversed and 4 of them to be upright. And you have to decide that before you do anything, not even starting with the first scenario.
Mm.
And so you have to kind of plan ahead where you're like, okay, in the friggin' in the clutch of the chaos, we'd really like to have a mulligan, for example. So
Mhm.
make sure that that one's upright. I don't know exactly which one it is, but I think that is one of them. So yeah, it's a really cool mechanic. We did the campaign reading when I did my blind playthrough, because we were already ahead of the release order at that point, so the Return to was already out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so we had them all out. We chose them beyond, and the only thing that I said was like, make sure like the later scenarios, it's good to have a positive thing happen with them rather than a negative thing, because like messing with your mulligan or removing slots can be pretty impactful the later on the campaign goes. So
I would say if I were doing this one, I would pick it'd be reversed. The final gen of the game enters with 1 Doom on it. That seems okay by me in this particular scenario.
I believe that is what we chose as well.
Nice. Okay. Well, maybe we'll follow along with that for all the other scenarios because that seems like fun.
Sure.
What was the first one? We missed
First one in the witching hour is Temperance, which is Temperance. I believe it's something about sanity. Yeah, each investigator is +1 sanity or -1 sanity.
That's a tough one for the beginning.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to our third scenario next week, which is the secret
Yep.
name. Looking forward to talking about lots of rats.